people in the media ought to damn well be ashamed. All you can see is killing the political fortunes of Donald Trump. That's all you can see. And so the American people getting sick, a pandemic around the world, is an opening for the Democrats.
Well, following months of impeachment and years of investigations, Washington seems more partisan than ever. So is anyone surprised the coronavirus conversation almost instantly turned political? Correspondent David Spunt reports.
When it comes time to talk about pandemics or whatever you may want to call it, you got to get away from politics.
Tonight, President Trump called for political civility as the White House battles the coronavirus. Hours before, both sides of the aisle pledged to work together.
Lives are at stake. This is not a time for name-calling or playing politics.
Diseases don't know party lines.
Asking to stay away from politics and doing so are two different things. Just a few hours after returning from his trip to India, the president blamed news outlets for making the coronavirus, quote, look as bad as possible, including panicking markets if possible. Later in the morning, Speaker Nancy Pelosi took a direct shot at the president's coronavirus response.
What he's doing is late, too late, anemic. Hopefully we can make up for the loss of time.
Last night at a news conference to brief the American people on the virus, politics crept in.
I think Speaker Pelosi's incompetent. She lost the Congress once. I think she's going to lose it again.
The White House originally proposed $2.5 billion to fight the virus. Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer want $8.5 billion. Both criticized the $2.5 billion White House offering.
We should be working together. He shouldn't be making statements like that because it's so bad for the country. And Nancy Pelosi, I mean, she should go back to her district and clean it up.
President Trump did extend an olive branch in the White House briefing room, telling the American people if Congress needs more than $2.5 billion to fight, so be it. As of now, the number both sides of the aisle are discussing to combat coronavirus, $7 billion. This could change, but Republicans and Democrats at this point are working together to get this funded, and it could hit the president's desk early next week. Shannon?
All right, David Spunt, thank you. So let's unpack this topic with Left Coast News host Ethan Behrman and Daily Caller video columnist Stephanie Hamill. Great to have both of you back with us tonight.
Hello, Shannon.
Hi, Shannon.
Okay. Hello. So Senator Chuck Schumer, who is the top Democrat over in the Senate, says this: President Trump must get his act together. Stop blaming, stop belittling, roll up your sleeves, unite America, and start proposing real solutions. Stephanie.
Wow, it is truly sickening to see people trying to point fingers at the other side to try to blame this on President Trump. Right now is not the time for partisan politics. President Trump, the administration, the White House have been handling this quite well. It was a month ago that they stopped the flights from China. President Trump was criticized for that. It was an unpopular move. He was accused of being a racist. We know that he asked Congress for $2.5 billion in extra funding to combat the virus. That was met with quick resistance from the Democrats. He's also being criticized by the media right now. Right now, we saw a New York Times opinion columnist trying to dub this as the Trump virus. This is not the Trump virus. This is the China virus. As you know, the CDC offered to come in and help and contain and do the research. China didn't want the help. China had punished journalists who were sounding the alarm. The list goes on.
Okay, you mentioned the piece in the New York Times. This was an opinion piece by Gail Collins. We have the headline. It says, let's call it Trump virus. If you're feeling awful, you know who to blame. Ben Shapiro tweeting this: so China unleashes a highly viral and significantly deadly virus and actively shuts down information about it. The virus hits every populated continent, and you're calling it Trump virus? Ethan, is that fair?
No, it's not Trump virus, and Ben's also wrong blaming China for unleashing it. This is a natural problem that happens. This is why it starts in China and in Africa and these specific regions where humans are too close to animals, and so a virus is able to jump across species. Nobody unleashed this, and so let's stop with those conspiracies as well. Here's the problem. The Republicans are no better at this either. So President Trump was tweeting at President Obama during the Ebola crisis, as was Representative Scalise, as was Representative Representative Tom Cotton. This is what people do. It's not pretty, but we need leadership, which is to come forward and say, this is a serious problem. We're taking it head on. We're going to take it seriously. Not say, oh, it's nothing. It's under control. It's going to go away in a couple of months. That's not true either. Let's take it seriously. Let's commit the resources. Let's listen to the scientists, and let's commit the funding necessary to solve this problem and protect not just the American people, but people around the world, because that also affects our economy as well.
Okay, the Associated Press had a bit of a fact check on some of the information, because there's a lot of information flying around on all sides that some is correct and some is not. They say this about the issue of funding. He says the National Institutes of Health and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention are not suffering from budget cuts that never took effect. In fact, they apparently have better funding than they did before, because Congress decided that they didn't want to go along with what the president suggested, which happens in every presidential administration, Democrat or Republican. Congress decides. But Stephanie, are you worried that there's information out there that's not accurate?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of misinformation going around that we need to be concerned about. There's a lot of, I just want everyone to be careful. We don't want to downplay what's happening, but we also don't want to overstate what's happening. And it's obviously a confusing time, and there's a lot of fear out there because there's so many things that we don't know right now. But I want to put this in perspective, because in the flu season, 2019 to 2020, 14,000 people died of the flu in America. 250,000 people were hospitalized. So I think that's important to note. And obviously, these are very different, the flu versus the coronavirus, but we're not even talking about that.
All right, let me bring Ethan in for final word here.
Yeah, and it's important to note, though, the flu we have drugs for, coronavirus we don't yet. And that's the dramatic difference, a 2.5% mortality rate. That's what the Spanish flu had, that killed 50 million people around the world. We need to be very careful about this. This has changed in a way that scientists had predicted was going to happen. We don't have the technology to stop this yet. We need to be concerned. We need to stay focused on finding solutions and working together to find them.
I think that is the best advice, that we all need to be unified and hoping and working for the very best in this situation. Ethan and Stephanie, thank you both.